I am 32 years old, have been married to my wife who is 30 years old, for almost 6 years. We met in college, and at first, she was everything I thought I could ever want in a partner. She was supportive, encouraging, and honestly, the kind of woman who made me believe I could take on the world. When I struggled with jobs right out of school, she always had my back. She'd say things like, "We're a team. We'll figure this out together." I held on to that. But somewhere around year 4 of our marriage, things started shifting. It wasn't dramatic at first, little things. She stopped asking about my day. She'd spend more time scrolling on her phone with this half smile on her face that she wouldn't explain. I'd ask what she was laughing at, and she'd just brush it off. "Nothing, just a meme." You wouldn't get it. The intimacy started to fade, too. Not just physically, but emotionally. Conversations turned into logistics, bills, groceries, chores. She stopped being present, you know? I thought it was stress, or maybe just the natural slump that comes with long-term relationships. I convinced myself it was normal. But what I didn't realize at the time was that her distance wasn't because of stress or burnout. She was giving her energy, her attention, her affection to someone else. It happened by accident. I wasn't snooping, I swear. My wife had left her laptop open on the kitchen table one night. She usually keeps everything locked down. Passwords, Face ID, even her notifications turned off. But that night, maybe she was tired, maybe careless, I don't know. I just went to close the laptop, but a chat window was open. At first, I thought it was just some work thing, because the name at the top was one of her coworkers, Evan. I'd met him a couple of times. Seemed like a harmless guy, a little too charming maybe, but nothing that ever raised alarms. I wish I could unsee what I saw. The messages weren't graphic, but they cut deeper than anything physical could. Things like, "You're the only one who really understands me. I think about you all the time at night. Sometimes I wish I could just run away with you. And the worst part?" She wrote back with hearts. "With love." My wife, the woman who had been sitting across from me at dinner just hours earlier, telling me she was too tired to talk, had been pouring her heart out to another man. I closed the laptop, sat there in silence, and felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. The next morning, I couldn't hold it in. My stomach was in knots. My chest felt like it was caving in. Over breakfast, I just blurted it out. "I saw your messages with Evan." She froze mid-bite, then slowly put her fork down. Her face didn't show guilt. It showed annoyance, like I had just accused her of leaving the lights on. "What messages?" she asked, her tone flat. I told her exactly what I saw. The hearts, the late-night thoughts, the running away comment. My voice was shaking, but I laid it all out. Her reaction? She laughed, then said, "You're being ridiculous. It's just work banter. You always twist things in your head because you're insecure." I felt my blood boil. Work banter? You don't tell coworkers you want to run away with them. But she doubled down. She rolled her eyes and went on about how I was the problem, how I'd been paranoid ever since she started her new job, and how I clearly didn't trust her. She said things like, "This is why I don't talk to you about my friends. You always overreact. If you keep accusing me of cheating, maybe you're the one with something to hide. God, can't a woman just have friends without her husband turning it into something dirty?" And the way she said it, like I was the crazy one, like I had just imagined everything. By the end of the conversation, I found myself apologizing. Apologizing for snooping, for being jealous. She turned the whole thing around so smoothly that I walked away questioning whether I'd even seen what I thought I saw. But deep down, I knew. I knew I wasn't crazy. After that confrontation, I felt like my brain was splitting in two. On one hand, I knew what I saw. Those words, those emojis, they weren't just work banter. On the other hand, she was so confident in her denial, so skilled at twisting the conversation, that I started second-guessing myself. Maybe I was insecure. Maybe I had overreacted. Maybe it really was harmless. But then little things started piling up. Things I had brushed off before now screamed at me. The way she suddenly kept her phone face down all the time. The late-night work calls that always seemed to happen in the bathroom with the door locked. Her new habit of smiling at her phone and then quickly changing the screen if I walked into the room. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our marriage. Was she ever really happy with me? Did I miss the signs? And then anger started creeping in. Not explosive anger, slow, simmering resentment. Because while I was driving myself crazy with self-doubt, she was out there laughing with him, confiding in him, giving him the pieces of her that used to belong to me. The more I thought about it, the more I realized. If she could so easily convince me that I was the problem, what else had she been hiding? That's when I decided I needed answers. Real answers. One night around midnight, I woke up to the sound of her voice. At first I thought she was talking in her sleep, but then I realized she was whispering. I got up as quietly as I could and followed the sound. She was in the living room, phone pressed to her ear, pacing. I only caught fragments. "No, he's asleep. I can't say that now. You know how I feel." Then a long pause where she just smiled into the phone. That smile, I hadn't seen it directed at me in months. When I confronted her the next morning, she brushed it off instantly. It was work. Again. A late client call. "Why are you eavesdropping?" That's creepy. She made me feel like a stalker in my own house. But a few days later, I noticed something strange. She had a second Instagram account I'd never seen before. Not under her real name. Some artsy username with no followers I recognized. The bio was vague. A single quote about finding connection where you least expect it. When I asked about it casually, she got defensive right away. "God, you're obsessed. It's just a private account for me. Not everything is about you." That was the moment it clicked for me. She had built an entire second life, one that I wasn't meant to be part of, and I was done ignoring it. This part stings more than anything else. A couple of weeks after I found the secret Instagram, I met up with one of our mutual friends, Jenna. She seemed nervous the whole time, like she wanted to say something but couldn't. Finally, after a couple drinks, she just sighed and said, "Look, I don't want to get in the middle of this, but you deserve to know she hasn't exactly been honest." My heart dropped. I pressed her, and she admitted that my wife had been really close with Evan for months. Apparently, they'd been showing up to group outings together, whispering in corners, sometimes even leaving early for work stuff. Everyone noticed, but no one said a word to me. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" I asked, and Jenna just shrugged helplessly. "We thought you knew, or that it wasn't our place." That line, "we thought you knew," burned through me, because it meant that to everyone else it was obvious. I was the only one living in the dark, making excuses, defending her. When I confronted my wife about it, she went nuclear. She accused Jenna of trying to sabotage our marriage and told me, "If you can't even trust your own wife over some gossip, then maybe you're the problem here." Gaslighting again, turning me against the people who were finally telling me the truth. That's when the anger really started to outweigh the doubt. Once Jenna confirmed what I had suspected, I stopped taking my wife's words at face value. I started paying attention, not snooping but observing. Patterns began to emerge, and they were impossible to ignore. She always had late meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The exact nights I'd notice Evan's car wasn't in the office lot when I picked her up once or twice before. Her phone battery was suddenly always dying. But somehow she managed to post on her secret Instagram during those exact gaps. As she started dressing up for work again. Not just business casual like full makeup, new dresses, perfume she never wore around me anymore. When I gently brought it up, trying not to sound accusatory, she snapped, "Do you even hear yourself? You're paranoid. You're making up some crazy conspiracy theory because you can't handle me having a life outside of you." Then she'd flip it completely. "Maybe if you paid more attention to me, I wouldn't need to talk to other people so much." That one hurt, because for a split second I almost believed her. Like maybe this was my fault. Maybe I hadn't been enough. But every time I looked back at those messages, those secret smiles, that private Instagram, I knew this wasn't about me failing her. This was about her choosing to give the best parts of herself to someone else. And I couldn't keep pretending anymore. The proof came almost by accident again. One Thursday night, she texted me around 8 p.m., Running late. Big project. Don't wait up. Normally I would have let it slide, but something in my gut told me to check. So I drove by her office. Her car wasn't there. Neither was Evan's. I almost left it at that, but on the way home, I stopped at a coffee shop near downtown, and there they were, sitting in the corner booth, leaning across the table, laughing like teenagers on a first date. Her hand was on his. I swear I felt my chest cave in. I didn't even confront them, I just left, shaking. When she got home later, she acted exhausted, like she'd been buried in spreadsheets. I asked casually, "So, how was the project?" And she launched into this long-winded explanation about how stressful it had been. That's when I snapped. "I saw you," I said, "at the coffee shop, with Evan." The color drained from her face for just a second, but then she smiled. Smiled, like I was some naive child who didn't understand the world. "You really need help," she said coldly. "I can't believe you're stalking me now. Do you know how insane that sounds? You're making up stories because you're jealous of a friendship." A friendship. That's what she called it. But I couldn't unsee her hand on his. That night I slept on the couch. Not because she asked me to, but because I couldn't bear to lie next to her. I didn't know what I expected. Rage? Clarity? Some kind of confession? A few days after the coffee shop incident, I ran into Evan at a bar. I hadn't planned to confront him, but seeing him there, laughing with his friends like nothing was wrong, I couldn't hold it in. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice calm but low. "Can we talk?" He looked surprised but followed me outside. I went straight for it. "You know my wife, right? The woman you've been texting, meeting, smiling at like she's the only person in the world." His face went pale for half a second before settling into this smug, almost amused look. "Look, man, I didn't realize you were so controlling. We're just friends. She talks to me about work stuff." I felt my hands clench. Friends don't text each other that. Friends don't meet in secret, late at night, and flirt under the table. You know exactly what's going on. Evan hesitated, then shrugged like it didn't matter. "She's been lonely, okay?" I didn't push anything. She came to me. That hit me harder than I thought it would. My wife, my partner, had chosen to confide in him instead of me. And everyone had known. Everyone except me. I walked away shaking, feeling like the floor had collapsed beneath me again. But there was also clarity now. I had proof. I couldn't pretend anymore. After the confrontation with Evan, something shifted inside me. The confusion, the self-doubt, they didn't vanish overnight, but they started to lose power. The anger took over, and with it, a strange kind of clarity. I stopped asking myself if I was overreacting. I stopped doubting my instincts. Every hidden account, every late-night call, every whispered confession made sense now. She wasn't stressed. She wasn't lonely. She wasn't misunderstood. She was emotionally cheating, and she had been doing it for months. The anger fueled me, not reckless rage, but a cold, deliberate realization that I deserved better. That I didn't have to apologize for wanting honesty, for wanting loyalty, for wanting to be treated like a partner instead of an obstacle. I started keeping track. Every suspicious call, every message I could confirm, every time she tried to gaslight me into feeling guilty. I realized how much energy I had wasted trying to believe her version of reality, trying to protect her feelings over my own sanity. And that's when I knew I couldn't go back. Not as things were. Not with her manipulating me, dismissing me, and choosing someone else over me. I realized that staying in that marriage as it was would only erode me further. The love I had for her hadn't disappeared, but it had been buried under betrayal, manipulation, and lies. I had a choice. Keep pretending everything was okay, or reclaim my self-respect. I sat her down one evening calmly and said, "I know what's been happening with Evan. I know about the secret messages, the Instagram, the meetings. I'm done pretending it's my fault or trying to make this okay. I can't continue like this." She rolled her eyes and started to argue, but I held up a hand. "I'm not listening to the excuses. I'm making a choice to take care of myself. You can stay if you want, but the marriage as it was, it's over." I won't stay in a relationship where I'm treated like I don't matter. The look on her face was a mix of surprise, frustration, and, finally, maybe, a glimmer of guilt. But I didn't wait for her reaction. I started putting my boundaries in place. Limiting contact, changing passwords, seeking therapy, and surrounding myself with friends who actually had my back. For the first time in months, I felt some relief. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was taking action. The weeks that followed were hard. Every small reminder of her favorite mug, her playlist, the way she laughed, stung. But I focused on myself. I started therapy, partly to untangle the mess of emotions and partly to rebuild my confidence. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected, people who weren't afraid to speak the truth when I couldn't see it. I even picked up hobbies I'd abandoned, things that reminded me who I was before the constant anxiety and self-doubt took over. I didn't try to contact her or force closure. I just observed from a distance, letting reality speak for itself. Slowly, I noticed the relief that came from not having to tiptoe around her moods, not having to constantly question my sanity. The anger had softened into quiet determination. I was learning to trust myself again, to trust my instincts, my feelings, and my right to demand honesty in any relationship. And as hard as it was, I knew I'd never settle for anything less than that again. Just when I thought I had clarity, something unexpected happened. One of her coworkers, someone I barely knew, reached out to me anonymously. They sent screenshots showing that my wife had been orchestrating this entire emotional affair with Evan. Not because she had feelings for him, but because she wanted to test me. Test my reaction, my loyalty, my patience. Apparently, she had confided to this coworker that she doubted our marriage and wanted to see if I would catch on. She even bragged a little about how skillfully she could manipulate me, how she enjoyed watching me unravel while she remained untouchable. I felt sick. Angry, yes, but mostly disgusted. The betrayal wasn't just emotional anymore. It was calculated, cruel, and deliberate. Every late-night call, every secret message, every gaslight conversation had been a test for her amusement. It was heartbreaking, but also clarifying. I wasn't just leaving because of confusion or fear. I was leaving because I deserved better. And no one who treats you like a game deserves a second chance. After everything, I knew there was no going back. I stopped responding to her calls and texts unless absolutely necessary. I unfollowed, blocked, and removed any access she had to my life online. I told myself clearly, no explanations, no justifications, no trying to fix what was broken beyond repair. I focused on building boundaries, protecting my emotional space, my mental health, and my self-respect. I re-established routines that made me feel like myself again. Working out, reconnecting with old friends, and dedicating time to hobbies I had neglected for years. The first few weeks were tough. I would think of her, replay memories, wonder if I had missed signs. But each time I reminded myself, this wasn't about revenge. It was about me reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my peace of mind. Slowly, I felt lighter, stronger, more like the person I was before I got caught up in the lies. I realized something important. Happiness isn't about being with someone who manipulates you. It's about being true to yourself. If there's one thing I've learned from this, it's that emotional affairs are often invisible until you stumble on them. And by then, they've already eaten away at trust. They start small. Secret texts, subtle attention to someone else, emotional intimacy that should be yours. But over time, they spiral into something that can destroy your sense of reality. Here's my advice to anyone reading this. 1. Trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. Don't let gaslighting make you doubt yourself. 2. Observe patterns, not isolated incidents. Emotional cheating isn't one text or one meeting. It's consistent behavior over time. 3. Don't ignore your own needs. Love and loyalty should be mutual. If your partner constantly dismisses your feelings, that's a red flag. 4. Talk to trustworthy friends. Sometimes people notice what you can't, and silence doesn't mean loyalty, it can mean complicity. 5. Prioritize self-respect. Ending a relationship is painful, but staying in one where trust is broken can be far worse. I won't lie. The scars remain, and I'll always wonder how it could have been different. But I also know that I reclaimed myself, and that, more than anything, is worth it.